Welcome to Get to Know Your Neighbor. I'm your host, Cameron Geesaman with Geesaman Homes. And as a quick reminder, each week on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 7:30, we do a Facebook Live interview like this, introducing you to amazing neighbors in Fishers. Tonight, our guest, I'm so excited, is Jennifer Driscoll, who is a local photographer. Many might remember a little white cottage. It was kind of her home office in downtown Fishers, where she had 2,000 square feet of studio. Recently, that actual house has been torn down. It's so kind of sad to drive by and not see it there. I must admit, I actually called Jennifer because I thought maybe she had decided to pursue other things. One being, maybe loving on and or spoiling her grandkids. Luckily for all of us, I was wrong. She is actually still very active with photography. I'm excited to talk to her about her view on Fishers since she was there for so long, what her approach is to photography, and I'm sure we'll probably talk about her grandkids and her family. So please welcome Jennifer Driscoll.
Hello, how are you tonight?
I'm good. I kind of write that beforehand and kind of get prepped, but I really, truly, when I called you, am so grateful for you saying yes.
Oh, well, no, I'm honored to be here, and I love talking about my little white cottage.
I love that cottage. We actually were downtown yesterday and stopped at Four Day Ray to have lunch, and we were talking about kind of this interview, and you can kind of see, you can look out and see that it's not there.
I know it is a little sad when I drive by, but I had almost 10 wonderful years of my business in that building, and I still actually all the memories that were made there, there's still a piece of my business and in my heart.
Oh, for sure. I don't know how you can be down there so long and not have it be. So I always start off kind of with the first question. It has been morphed a little bit because I was asking, what do you think about when you hear, like, what's the word, or what do you think of when you hear the word Fishers? Every single person said growth. So
yeah, you better change it because I would probably use that same word.
Yes, every single person. So we changed it a little bit. So now it's, what is your favorite part? What was your favorite part of having a business in Fishers?
I would say if I had to choose one word, it would be connection. Okay. And because really Fishers was the home of my business and the birth of where everything started. And I still to this day have connections that I made 20 years ago, and these people are still in my life. And I just found every day there were new connections and business owners collaborating with each other, especially since Fishers is growing so much. Of course, we all had invested in Fishers, and we would collaborate with each other. What are you doing for your business? And this is going to change. And how are you going to utilize it to boost the growth of, what you're doing? And it just, so I would say connection.
Okay. Did you feel like you had that connection at the very beginning?
Yeah, I did.
Go ahead.
Well, my business started as a connection, and it was kind of an accident. Okay. So first it was just connecting with neighbors. I'm a dinosaur photographer. So I used to use this stuff called film and these little cameras so I had a dark room in my laundry room, and things grew, but it was a connection that I made with another business owner that allowed me to have commercial space. And Debbie Cook, who had Twigs too, I don't know if you remember, she was first next to the barber shop, and my business was above hers. And then we moved together and put our businesses next to each other on Maple Street. And to this day, we're still really great friends.
It's that history that I wanted to kind of bring to this show too, because people don't know that history, right? Like they saw the White House, they know Jennifer Driscoll because, who doesn't know Jennifer Driscoll? You are still, and will probably always be, one of my favorite photographers locally. You know what I mean?
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I will say it's funny to hear you say that you were that you had film, because in college I took 4 semesters of photography, and although I took that, I'm not really a photographer. I was looking in a memory box, and I have like the prints of just the black and whites. Like
Yeah.
Different stuff that you did, I almost forget about that. Do you miss the dark room?
Um, I still print pictures. And to me, I miss editing and getting in and actually processing film? No, I'll
Oh,
be honest. That part I don't miss. Because there's no way that I could sustain my business at the pace that photography is today if I were still doing that. But the novelty of I keep meaning to go. I still have some rolls of film I have not developed that are personal
oh,
from
that'd be amazing.
someday when I'm dead, my kids will probably be like, "What is this?" And I don't know what's it on it, but I keep meaning to go and process it. But I mean, I've sold all of that equipment, and but what I would miss is the actual prints because a lot of people they don't print things. Pictures are for social media. Pictures are digitally kept for slideshows, and so that aspect of the physical touching and processing
Mhm.
I wouldn't say that I miss it, but I do have urges sometimes to go back and do that. Um, but there's no way that you could sustain a photography business or keep up with the world if you don't shoot digital.
Okay, so one of the questions I had was over the 20 years of being in Fishers, what would you say was your biggest achievement?
I probably my biggest achievement was the family that I grew within my studio. So I mean, I went from having maybe 10 customers to having thousands. I mean, when I send out my newsletter, it goes to over 5,000 people. And I think that, and every time I send out a newsletter, which I don't do very often because I feel we get a lot in our inbox, right? But when I do, I'll get someone from a decade ago or someone who was photographed in my living room 20 years ago, and they'll write back, "Oh my gosh, I'm just so glad you wrote me. My daughter, you took her pictures when she was 2, and she's getting married now." And so I think that my biggest achievement are those lasting relationships that have grown within the studio family.
Do you love kind of seeing that where you have somebody where you did take a photograph of them in your living room, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah, I love seeing it,
and then taking and doing their weddings? Like, that's huge.
it's crazy, and it's such an honor, and by the way, Susan Schenkel just made a comment, "Hi, friend, how are you? Thank you for joining us." Thank you, but, yeah, I'll have kids when you're working as a photographer, it's kind of a very intimate thing that you're doing because you're trying to make someone feel comfortable in front of the camera, and
Mhm.
real estate is all about stories and photography is all about stories. And so when I see someone that I photographed when they were in diapers, I have a history with them that translates into the wedding day. And I just, you feel like you're part of the family being there. So I really love that part of my business.
I think that's one of the reasons we even love ours. Like, you get to know them as more of a family than just
Yeah.
a customer or a client, you know? Um,
Yeah.
I wanna remind people because I just realized I forgot to mention this at the beginning, but for anybody that's kind of joining in, thank you. Make sure to make a comment, in the comment section to let us know you're here. We can't see who you are unless you give us a wave, and we always love all the comments, but with talking with Jennifer over the last couple weeks, she has agreed we're going to do a giveaway at some point. So as you're listening, one of the questions or the question for the giveaway will come from our conversation. And she has offered to give 30% off of prints. Now, she and I kind of talked so that if you've had your photographs taken from Jennifer, let's say you just haven't ordered those prints yet, make sure to try to win in the giveaway because then she'll give you that additional 30% off, which I very much appreciate that, Jennifer.
Yeah. I'm excited to do it.
I know, I'm like, ooh, I need to have pictures taken and I need,
Yeah,
I need
yeah, no, and 30% is pretty good. I get excited for every discount that comes into my mailbox these days, so
anytime. I know it kind of is that way right now. So
yeah.
anyway, stay tuned for the giveaway for everybody that is joining. But to kind of get back to that achievement. So here's my question. I didn't specifically ask this, but do you feel like what were some struggles or things that you kind of dealt with having a studio in Fishers and having all that growth? Because I feel like you would have that growth too, because you kind of grow with the city, right?
Oh, that is such a great point. Yeah, I grew with the city and I didn't anticipate the success that would come my way. So I had quite a bit of volume happen as things picked up. And when you do a good job, your name gets passed around and people call you. And so I think the biggest struggle I had as a business owner was my business growing and me working till 2 a.m., like most of us who own businesses, um, tend to do if we're an entrepreneur, but also figuring out the business end of things, hiring employees, learning what makes a great employee, how to be a great employer. And that was probably the toughest part for me in the beginning. And I found that over the years, gaining experience and having wonderful mentors, I learned how to run a successful business with a team. And I really enjoyed having a team. I had great people working for me. At one point in time, I had two full-time people, two part-time people, and the studio was just, yeah, it was really busy. I had another shooter, so I kind of had this mountain of just a journey within the business, and so I'm kind of now in a place where I'm kind of returning to my roots a little bit as I get a little older. I just get a little better.
You're not, don't say that. Nope.
Yeah, but thank you. Thank you. But I planned for this and I always knew that at that point I loved that, that wave that I rode and it was just fantastic. But the biggest struggle definitely was figuring out that balance of, bringing in help and okay, how do we work together? And then I finally succeeded at that. And it was just I had a good solid 15 years with employees. That was just fantastic. And I still keep in touch with them. And um, yeah, so that it was a good it was a good roadblock to come into, and I really grew as an entrepreneur and a businesswoman, learning how to manage all of that.
Can you kind of tell us like what kind of photography you do? And you mentioned team, and so do you have a team? I feel like your daughter helps, but I could be wrong. So can you kind of like tell us like what kind of photography you do? Because that's probably pretty important for everybody that's watching.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and what kind of team you have or where you're at? Because I kept mentioning she's not there anymore, but like where are you and kind of what are you doing now?
Yeah, so you're right. That is loaded. There's a lot.
I
A lot
know.
of
Sorry,
questions.
that was a big one.
No, it's okay. It's okay. Let me. Screen is popping up here. I'm so sorry, Cameron. Let me shut that off for a second. There. So we had the team that I had. I don't currently have. So we grew, and I had Jordan, who has now she works for digital for MS Communications as a digital brand manager,
Okay.
and Jordan was with me for almost 10
Wow.
years.
Yeah. Okay.
And she was a second shooter. Now this was kind of at the peak of when we were extremely busy, and I was probably doing 4 shoots a day as well as weddings on the weekend, maybe 30 to 35 weddings. So the type of photography that I started out, my very first professional shoot was a maternity session, which I think about how meaningful that is to me now because I've really grown to be one of the area's more popular baby, newborn, maternity photographers. And my original background is in nursing, and that was always something that really was just a passion of mine. So I really enjoy visiting with new moms and their babies, and how'd your stay at the hospital go? And so that was the beginning. But then somebody came to me with a wedding. Their photographer had left town. Their wedding was in 2 weeks. I had no idea about weddings, but their wedding was like more than 300 people at the Scottish Rite Cathedral and St. Joan of Arc Church before. And I didn't know that was a big wedding. I didn't know, but
Yeah.
I was all film and I knew enough to take somebody with me, and we did a great job, fantastic job. I mean, I still look back on those images and I'm very proud of what we did with the lack of experience I had at the time. And that's kind of snowballed. So then I picked up weddings. Next thing you know, someone's like, hey, can you come do headshots for my business? And in the meantime, I was educating myself on photography at
Okay.
the same time. So I did go take posing class. Well, you know, I'm like, I
Right.
want to be really good at this, right? And I know people can pick up a digital camera these days and learn some stuff real fast, but I didn't have the luxury of a digital camera. So I had to actually go put in the work and learn what an f-stop is and, you know, and drag my shutter. Just, I had a lot of things to learn. So, and now where I'm at is I only shoot about 5 to 10 weddings a year at the most. And because I have grandchildren now,
I
and
know.
oh, and I love them so
So
much.
cute.
Oh, they're so cute, so yummy. But I love to have more time with them. But I'm still very active with commercial work. I mean, it's
Okay.
really cool as a photographer because I'm a little bit of an adventurer. And so this business,
No.
yeah,
I
right.
know you are.
Yeah, my Wrangler has no top on it right now, so I'm a real adventurer, and, you know, people would just call me, and I find that, again, photography is all stories. I've photoshopped robots that are welding car parts. I've photoshopped food. I People bring me into spaces where they need imagery to tell their story, so I really like that dynamic. So I'm not specifically like one thing, but what I'm really busy with these days, senior Fishers, a Fishers resident called me today for senior pictures, the second Fishers resident that I booked. So even though my studio is not necessarily physically in Fishers anymore,
Right.
I still visit the community often. But babies, you know, occasional wedding, lots of commercial work. I do a lot of that, and I do photograph in Fishers, the Goddard School, their pictures
Mhm.
at Burke School on 116th Street. I actually have a few Goddards that I photograph for, and that's really neat because, you know, I talked about connection being a strong word for me when I think of Fishers, and I'll take their daughter's picture and they're like, hey, wait, you took my company headshots, you know, 2 months ago. And these kids, they come in and they know me. You know, first they were in the 1 year room and now they're 5 years about to go to kindergarten and they're like, the picture lady, Miss Jennifer, you know. So
Aw.
yeah. So I don't do just one specific thing, but if there's something that needs to be photographed, I'm capable. And I really
You have a favorite?
It's a really tough question because it depends on the day. Because I am an artist. I really like photographing food because I also love to cook.
You do love to cook.
I do love to cook, and I really found that I'm photographing food isn't as easy as you would think. So I really like the
Not.
It's not, right?
It's hard, but I deal with this with photography of houses because
Yeah, that's
I
tough.
have people who are like, okay, yes, I'm a photographer of people, right? I can do, group photos or whatever. And they're like, I think I want to do home fit photos. And so I'm like, okay, well, let's see what that looks like. And I'll send them in. And it's like, oh, those aren't, those aren't good.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
it's different. Like,
There's a huge difference. In photographing real estate, it's actually a lot of times two images need to be merged together. I got a call to photograph a commercial building over by the pyramids a couple years ago. And I mean, this building is being sold for several $1 million. So a company out of Chicago, another photographer connected me, but I had to go out there 3 different times to get a sunset, midday, and a sunrise. And I had to take those images and merge them into one so the building would be lit up properly. So, yeah, it's not just a quick thing. Photographing houses is actually a difficult thing, I think.
yeah, it's funny that you say that because exterior photography, our photographer that we use does HDR for interior
Right. Yeah, which that's great.
because you can merge, right? You can take something at a longer shutter speed, f-stop, and then and be able to then merge them so that you don't have pockets of darkness. You can see out the window because I see so
Right.
many, again, not that they're bad photographs, they're just not done the right way with what you want for a home.
Right, which is tough because our eyes see differently what our shutter captures. Like
Please.
when I
Yes.
look out my window light's not blown out. I can actually see my trees getting rained on right now. But if it were sunny and you were taking a picture, it might just be blown out and look white.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yes,
So,
it's hard. It's hard because it's like, and you have agents that want to do it. I wanted to do it. I took photography. I was like, I know how to do this. I could do this. Nope.
no, it's a
I
whole different animal.
I know. That's why I hire it out.
And you're smart. Your time is better spent elsewhere, right?
Yeah, somebody else can do it.
Right.
It's interesting to hear that you don't have a favorite. I felt like I thought you were going to say kids only because you take pictures of Jack all the time.
Well, I mean, Jack's just my favorite human. Well, I better rephrase that. He's my favorite 7-year-old because now I have to realize. So, I got to be fair here. But I will say, though, babies, there's never a day where I get in the car to go drive to do a newborn session where I'm like, ugh, I'm too tired. Never. I am always so excited to go hold babies and pose them. And so I
wish I knew now. How do I say that? I wish I would have known then what I know now, because we didn't do, like, I didn't do 12 years ago. It was kind of newer to do like these full like pregnancy pictures. And like my next door neighbor, which you actually know her, Jennifer Stump.
Oh, yeah.
We did them, but like we're outside. It wasn't the same as like a studio or what people are doing now, right?
Yeah, right.
And it's interesting because even with like the baby photography, like what people are doing now, like I know I don't have any of that.
No, it's like if you look at my wardrobe in the 90s, I mean, there were shoulder pads, my mall hair. I mean, when we know better, we do better.
Right.
And I'm really having fun right now. I just did my daughter's maternity session about 6 months ago before she delivered our second grandchild, Laura.
Oh, okay.
And I returned to what I did in the beginning of my career. So we photographed more fine art with her, and I loved the images, but I didn't do what most people come into my studio that are asking for. But the minute they saw Annie's, then people were calling me, hey, where did Annie get that dress? I want to do like that shot. So
I haven't seen those. Have you posted those yet?
Yeah, they're on they're on the Jennifer Driscoll photography Facebook page. You can't miss her. She's got just a black dress on.
She's gorgeous, first off.
Yeah, we think she's pretty awesome. So
yeah. So she's not helping because she was helping for a while, right?
For a long time. Annie, I have pictures of Annie when she was 8 years old carrying a tripod around. For those of you that don't know what that is, along with film, it's something you put your camera on before we had image stabilization. But I had shoots at the IMA one day, and I have the cutest pictures of her just toting that thing around, setting it up for me. And she started doing weddings with me when she was 14 years old. Now, she wasn't my only assistant, but she came with me often. And then Annie she by far was my best photo processor, like culling the images. That's kind of like keeping the good ones, throwing out the bad ones, and then Photoshop, exposure adjustment. Like she was my best at that. But she has since grown up, she's 26 years old now, and she's not 14 anymore. And she works at Roche Diagnostics. So she's got a really busy job right now because they make the test for COVID, but we're not going to talk about that today.
That's neat. When you say she started when she was 8 and then to 14, that's called entrepreneurship, where you pull your children in and then start.
Yeah, it's not child labor. It's not child labor at all. I mean, I think the first wedding, I was like, I'll buy you a Nintendo DS. Do you want to? Does anybody know what that is?
We do, because our kids still somewhat play with them. That's
awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We don't like the gaming, even though they play it. That's more of
I agree.
Because everybody's on gaming right now. Okay, I digress. For anybody that's joining, as a reminder, we are doing a giveaway, so stay tuned for that. Please make sure to put a comment below or mention. You can see that's Jennifer Driscoll. I'm Cameron. I feel like it's on the screen, so I don't feel like I have to say it all the time. We're kind of going through. It's been really great kind of hearing the backstory, because I don't know that. Like, I know who you are, but it's nice to hear the backstory. So Is there anything that, kind of onto the next question, is there anything or any advice that you would give like a new business owner? Because clearly you started as new and you've been, I feel like if you've been in business for over, a certain amount of time, you've kind of been put through the ringers.
Yeah.
So for any of these either new businesses or even just a business that's struggling right now, do you have like any advice for them?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is something that can apply to all businesses, but I think just having the humility to recognize the gifts in the people around you, even though you may be the leader. Because I know Jordan and I first started working together, I quickly realized like, okay, yeah, I'm boss, but she has a lot of really great ideas, and she's also a different age than I am. So she was always bringing me like, this is apps. Like now everybody knows what an app is, but when they were first coming out, she's like, there's an app for that. I'm like, app? Okay. So I think just having the humility to listen to the people around you will help you grow and also make you more relatable, but also, having those boundaries of knowing, well, that there are some times when I need to, I need to be the boss but yeah, just that humility and recognizing that although you're a leader, other people can contribute greatly.
I think that is literally probably one of the best advices that I think you can give, because I think even in today's society, we struggle with that, right? Like there's a lot of people that, have been doing it for 20 years, right? Like I've been doing this for 20 years. I know what I'm doing. I've built a successful business, and it's hard to go, okay, wait a minute. Maybe we should look at this. Maybe we should consider some of these other things. It's hard. It's not. And to kind of take that step, I think that's great advice. Any other tips or tricks?
Well, there's that work-life balance. Like I know personally, and I've had a lot of photographers, younger photographers call me and ask, can I shadow you? Can I intern? Or can I just talk to you for a half an hour just to hear like what you have to say? And one thing that I'll always tell them is, first of all, if you have a family, you do need to put them first, and you need to learn balance and set some boundaries for yourself. And I think that in the beginning, when you're starting a business, sure, there were nights when my husband and I were stripping the floors of the old studio that is now being torn down. What is this theme here of all my buildings being torn down? But the barbershop where Jack got his haircut, my husband used to get it anyway. My husband was there till like 3 a.m. stripping red paint off of the floors. I mean, you're going to put in some hours in the beginning, and I think that builds character. And I have pictures of the two of us just looking exhausted outside, like, oh, we're making this place pretty. But to this day, people will say, oh, I went to that studio and I really loved your loft studio. It's really sweet, But it's okay to put in a little elbow grease in the beginning, but it's that once don't let that go on for years. You have to have a work-life balance, and eventually when your kids graduate, you don't want to be crying going, I missed everything because I was at weddings on the weekend. Yeah. And my kids they always say the funniest things that can be taken in the most awful ways. They'll say the very first studio I had, we converted my living room into a studio. And then the kids would have to play in the basement. And my youngest once said, my mommy locks us in the dungeon while she takes pictures. And I'm just like, it was a fully finished basement. It had television, it had a toy room with a mural on it. We had 2 windows. I mean, it was not a dungeon, but it was just funny.
Justify it. Like, no, it wasn't a dungeon.
But at the end of the day, to her, it was a dungeon because mommy wasn't available to us, and we were told to be quiet and play nice and not fight, But sometimes my early customers, they would, just 1 second, the girl's having a moment, just 1 second, let me go take care of this. But yeah, you don't want to look back and wish that you'd been more present in your family life. So I think work-life balance is a really good thing.
You just give a mommy advice there too, because here's my next question. Now that the girls are older, do you think that although at that moment they said, mommy's put me in the dungeon, right? At the end of the day, do you feel like that built character in them, and that they, ultimately, like, that's not what they remember, right? I mean, for all those moms that are panicking, going, I'm putting my kid in the dungeon. You know what I mean? Like, they turned out fine.
I think I caught it just in time because like my middle child just graduated from Purdue. She's currently looking for a job. She's a K through 6 elementary school teacher.
Okay.
And I
For
tell you
all of
what,
our viewers.
yeah, her word. There you go. Anybody hiring? Mary's awesome.
Hiring.
But she is, her work ethic is amazing. And, I think that witnessing me and how driven I was and willing to accomplish in a field at the time, honestly, do have a little story. So when I first, you say mommy advice, I'm very sensitive to the fact that early in my business, this was more of a male dominated industry.
Oh, for sure.
And now it's not. Now moms with cameras are everywhere. But I sat down with someone and I had my 2-year-old daughter with me at the time. And this is when I got that first wedding. And I was looking at wedding albums with an album rep who was a male master photographer. And he told me, you love your family? Well, you don't know what you're doing. So just go home and don't do this for a living.
No, you didn't.
If I gotta say, if you tell me not to do something, my mother would be the first to say, Jennifer's gonna just do it and do it right. Yet years later, he's like watching my business flourish and but and I feel for him, but you can't. I pushed against that and went and accomplished, and I think my girls witnessed that. And my Annie's also done very great in her career at Roche. She's killing it. She's doing a wonderful job there. So I think I caught it just in time. I don't think my kids really have, although I'll get stories once in a while, those weekends when dad was watching us and you were at a wedding, dad, we've just pretty much ran free. Nobody, dad's mowing the lawn, doing all his stuff. We're just terrorizing the neighborhood. But
you do have really good daughters. At least from what I can see, you know what I mean? Like, and I think that that's something that all of us as parents, right? Especially when we're working, right? You're trying to grow this business and have a career while raising children. That can be challenging. And there are going to be moments where the kids, there were times where I would get a call for a client. These days, it's not so bad to hear kids in the background, but back, 15 years ago, if you heard kids, people didn't like that. And so I would leave, they'd be in the family room. I would go into my bedroom, into my bathroom, and then into my closet and close all those.
Yeah. The closet calls. I have made a few of those. I get
so many.
Yeah, but isn't it nice that in the professional world now we recognize we're human and that humans procreate. And so sometimes we have little gremlins running around and that's okay.
Yeah. I think it's good. That's one of these outcomes that I think has been good with kind of what's going on, that it's kind of given some grace to that, right? Like, and even the professional of like, always making sure that you're dressed accordingly or that you're wearing, a suit coat or stuff like that. Like it is different, right? Like you want to be professional, but is Julie Fox, does she?
Oh, Julie, yes. She has a beautiful family and she lives actually just a couple of neighborhoods over from me. And I had the great honor of photographing their wedding. So hi, Julie. Thanks for joining us. We love you too.
Thank you. Yes, I appreciate that. For anybody that's joining, please do that. Make a little comment and just, even if it's just an emoji wave, we don't mind those either, but we like seeing them and seeing kind of who's on and just kind of get to know people. So I love that because, ultimately we're trying to grow the channel too. And so it's like just bringing awareness. And so we've even found that so anybody that's watching now, if you pass it on to a friend to watch later, I'm getting messages later that are like, oh, I missed the live, but I saw the after, and that's the goal here, that hopefully people will see and learn about Jennifer outside of just the live, right? Because
community, neighborhood. Like I love doing this. So speaking of which, like Julie went to Garin. I didn't know this when I booked their wedding, where my daughter went to school as well. So, and now her mom and I, sometimes we find ourselves working out together, either at Orange Theory or Bangor. So, but it's such a small world. And like you doing this, people realize the connections that they have, and it just makes the world a lot smaller, especially with a growing city like Fishers.
It is. And honestly, that's maybe one of the things I've loved with doing this is learning, is that we are so connected. You don't realize, even though we've gone from when you started, which what year did you start in Fishers?
Oh, officially it was 1999.
Okay. So, when I was a senior in 98 at HSE, there were like,
I'm
I
feeling
know,
so old.
8 or 9,000 um, people in Fishers, because
Yeah.
there's 300 in my graduating class. To go from that to essentially 100,000, like I still feel like we still have that small feel of a town, and I think it's to people like you and to like Gary Reynolds, who we interviewed,
Yeah,
and
I love Gary. Yeah.
he's
And
one
we
of
buy all our, my husband has a tractor. We're getting ready to buy a gator. Like, yeah, he does. He's,
yes.
and the lights. I mean, who doesn't drive by those lights and just,
I
we're so
know.
grateful to that, Gary.
I know. We're just, here's the thing. We're spoiled in the city of Fishers, and I just want more people to know that there's greatness in the city. And even though you're not in Fishers, you're in Noblesville, which is a neighboring city. So it's like we're all neighbors.
We are. We're all neighbors. And I might be back in Fisher someday. That's my hope.
Well,
I,
that moves me to the next question. That's
yeah,
nice job. Way to transition for me.
that's your point.
What are your plans for the studio moving forward?
So it's interesting because how I talked about how I kind of, with Annie's shoot, I kind of returned to that initial style I had, trying to be a little bit more fine art. But I kind of did that with the studio too. So when I had to evacuate, which actually it was a very well planned, wonderful. When a fellow business owner in Fishers purchased my building, and when that happened, I found studio space in Noblesville, and it's much like that first studio I had. It's in a loft in a 100-plus-year-old building, and it has kind of people come and visit. They're like, "Oh my gosh, this is just like your first one." I'm like, "I know, I'm returning to my roots." But my plans for the studio are eventually, hopefully, to get back to Fishers. But with all the construction and the turnover at the moment, I had to find a place quickly, and I'm pretty happy in Noblesville, and I'm still close to all of the families that yeah, and a lot of people, they don't mind making that drive. And a lot of times I'm on location. I'll be at Heritage Park, or they'll want to meet in downtown Fishers or at their home. So my business is pretty mobile these days. So I would say I have just as many shoots.
Yeah. I have to admit, like for someone who, let's say I called you and said, "Hey, I want to do some, indoor photographs," right? The character of
Yeah,
that building, that's what's kind of cool with the photographs, right? Versus, okay, yes, you could have a studio in Fishers, but at least I've always felt like with the places that I've seen you go, it is sometimes about that character. Like you said at the beginning, it's that story.
right. And
You
the building that I'm in is the old Kaler building, and I think that building was built in 1893. I'm probably wrong about that. But like the floors, even though they were redone in the 60s, and the old windows, I mean, there's so much character there. And it's a lot like that building in Fishers. I don't think they've torn it down yet on 116th Street next to where the
No.
nickel plate is. It's coming soon.
Oh,
I
don't
know.
do that. I know.
No,
It's so
I
hard.
I know it is hard. It was such we have a lot of memories in that building. But structurally, like I saw the basement with all the water and the electrical panel. So I mean, sometimes you gotta just go with the change.
I know. It's hard because yes, being that we've been here for so long, it's hard to see that change. But at the end of the day, most of the people that I talk to, change can be good if you look at it in a positive light, right?
Right, right. Yeah, and talk about real estate. So one of the things about being a business owner that I found about myself is I really liked that entrepreneurial side. So when I purchased the land to build my studio, I realized that someday that investment would mean a profit for us because of what Fishers is doing. So there's a benefit to that. And, the real estate in Fishers, the value has come up because of all of the wonderful things that they're doing. So I am a person that values that vintage charm. And, sure, it's sad for me to see my building come down, but also what that profit did for my family, and my girls going to I've got one at St. Mary of the Woods right now. We put Mary through Purdue. Because of that investment, I was able to do wonderful things for my family. So I I think that if you look at it in a positive way instead of wanting to kind of hold on to that past,
Mhm.
there's always a plus side.
We can't always hold on to the past. I mean, it,
Yeah.
like we're moving forward. We're not moving backwards. It is what it is. And we just
Yeah.
have to kind of approach it. And I think that that's what I feel like I have a lot of conversations with people about is, okay, I know you don't like that Fisher's is looking like this or whatever, right?
Right.
At the
Right.
end of the day, we need to at least still have a positive outlook on it and it will be okay. Like Fisher's is thriving. We're doing really great. And our
Yeah.
community, and again, why I wanted to do the show, we still have the same neighbors. We're still all the amazingness that we were before. It just looks a little different,
Looks a little different, but we have more options, and now we can ride our bikes anywhere. And
right?
we were looking, things just were happening too quickly, so I wasn't able to make a decision. But I had looked at property across the street, down Lantern Road, I
Oh,
think South Street,
yep.
where there's some, and I almost bought a piece of land there to build another studio.
Okay.
Um, yeah, I was playing Monopoly. I'm like, okay, we'll just go here. But the lot wasn't big enough to accommodate like handicap access, which if I'm
Oh,
going to build a space, I do have a couple of clients who are in wheelchairs, and I loved the fact that they could come into my studio.
yeah.
Um, so I'm still keeping my eyes open for that.
Here's what I'm here to say. Anybody that's watching, if you think you could have something for Jennifer, um, she's looking.
Right. If you have something you think I might be interested in, that could be a
Right?
good
I
video.
thought about that the other day. I was like, okay, what do I know of? Who do I know that I can try to help? But yeah, I think that we're moving in the right direction. I think that it's good. I love your advice for people kind of with the business and I got some mom advice. So I'm loving that. Okay, so we mentioned a giveaway. We might as well go ahead and do that. So anybody that has been watching, we took a question from the interview that we've been watching or that we've been doing. So the question will come from that. So here's the rules. We're going to ask the question. You're going to put the answer below in the comments. The first person to answer the question correctly is the winner. If we had another show where unfortunately people, nobody had been listening when we asked the question, so we didn't have it solved during. So if by chance somebody doesn't answer and it goes after the fact, we'll reach out to you. So
Absolutely.
it's anybody who answers the first. So if it's after the live, then it's after the live.
Yeah.
So Adam is in the background and he's been kind of picking through stuff. And I think his question is pretty good. So the question is, what type of session was Jennifer's first photo shoot?
That's a good one, Adam. That's really
Right?
good.
I know. He started typing and I was like, yes, that's a good one. Because sometimes it's hard to try to gauge. So anybody that knows the answer to that, put below and you can get 30% off of your prints from Jennifer. So I'm
Past or present or future. So
yeah.
I
Oh, that's a good point.
yeah.
Past, present, or future. That's a good one. Okay, so we'll wait for an answer for that. While we're talking about that, who do you think, because again, I'll preface this for the new viewers that aren't familiar with the show. We're doing this show because I've mentioned it, but we want to bring awareness to our community. And so we're asking each of our guests who they feel like is an interview that they would watch. Because I feel like if our interviewees would watch it, then it would help, right? So who is someone that if I did an interview with them, a neighbor, that would interest you enough to watch? Yes, Chris got it. I'll come back to you, Chris, but go ahead and answer that.
Yeah, okay. It's so funny. I have two people that come to mind. I'm going to bounce this one, and this is taking my physical space. So another thing about that building is I had tenants. So I built a building that was bigger than what I needed so that I could have tenants to help offset the mortgage. And one of my tenants, her name is Melanie Stoddard, and she owns the Blush Salon. You didn't interview her yet, did you?
I haven't yet. No, she's on my list.
Yeah.
Because you mentioned it. Yes, I want to interview her.
Yes.
If you actually, afterwards when we're done, if you take the video and you tag her on it, because then she'll see that you mentioned her, because that's been helping me. Because sometimes like people don't, like, she's not watching.
Right.
So it helps. But tell me about her.
So she had just, I think she used to work in pharmaceuticals, and believe she's a Butler grad. Well, anyhow, she is now a stylist and owns her own salon. And my space, when it became available, she moved into, and quickly her business just grew. And now she has relocated kind of across from FDR. And now she's got several stylists in there. So she's really done well with her business. And I'll never forget, there was one morning, and I think it was like a summer day, and we were both getting there really early or really late. I can't remember. But she just looked over me. She goes, "Just two ladies building their empires," And I thought to myself, that's so true, because we both were balancing. But I think I just really admire how she grew her business, and what she did for herself and her family. So she's somebody to talk to. Do you want me to just do that one?
No, you can do more.
Okay.
I'll take any.
The second one is Steve Cage. And Steve has been in Fishers for a long time and had I believe his business was probably a multi-million-dollar business that he had kind of off of Exit 5. And he still owns the building that houses a new business that he sold. Well, the business he sold, I believe they still occupy. But Steve, I met through his daughter Kyle's wedding that I photographed. And I realized quickly, like, oh, he does a lot for the town of Fishers. I mean, he now has several buildings, and he is building the new, I think it's called the Steve Cage Animal Center. Well, it's kind of a new kind of humane society for Fishers that he is building. Well, Steve also purchased my building. And so when I was doing a shoot with one of his kids, and I mentioned, I'm putting the building up for sale. And she said, "I'm going to talk to my dad." And Steve's really good at playing Monopoly, like much better than me. So he ended up buying, I think, the whole block. But he's an interesting, fascinating person. I think he has more than 50 muscle cars, really unique business. He's a really dynamic person. And I think you would really enjoy interviewing him.
I would love that. I think actually, here's the thing. To be honest, I think my husband might like it, because you just said 50 muscle
cars. Oh, he owns, his cars are insane. We did his daughter's engagement session inside the building that he owns. The back of it, he has to have to house all of his vehicles. But he has like cars from the Indy 500, like the pace car plus the pace car that wrecked. Plus, I mean, it's just, the collection, I'm sure, has grown, but it's, it's fascinating. So,
well, I contacted the Humane Society to try to see if because when you mentioned it, I love the Humane Society. Actually, the person who won, Chris Hebert, actually, I'll put a thumbs up for Chris Hebert. He won. He adopted 2 dogs from the Humane Society up in Noblesville. And I'm telling you, they're the best 2 dogs ever. And so I love that he won it, because, we just love him. But he
put newborn in his comment, right? I can't wait for that. I think he put newborn in his comment. That means I get a baby. You call me soon, Chris.
So with the Humane Society, I called because I was like, I would love, because you mentioned that, but it would be really fun to do the Humane Society and Steve. You know what I mean? Like, there's so much information there, that I think that would be amazing.
It'd be great. Steve's he's done really well for himself, and he makes really sound investments. So he likes to be able to take projects and give and fund them. And his daughter, Kyle, has always done a lot of work with the Humane Society, rescuing dogs. I feel like she's always adopting new dogs. And by the way, Kyle, I will be visiting the Steve Cage new animal center. I'm sorry.
I can't wait. I really can't wait. It looks amazing.
Yeah, I want to get a couple of barn cats to take care of some rodent control. So, but anyway, yeah, I think you'd really enjoy. And Adam might have to go interview him in person just to see all the colors.
Before we put you on the show, we actually need to come to your house and test drive the cars to make sure we feel comfortable putting you on the show.
I think there's a full-time employee that has to go in and start them up to make sure that they all have to, because you can't just let a car sit idle. But that was a neat experience.
I think we all learned that through kind of the last couple months, we've all learned that you can't let a car just sit for 2 months and do nothing. You have to turn it on. Charge up the battery. Well, I absolutely love it. Before we go, there's a couple of questions, but one, if one of our viewers sees this live now or sees you later, where can they, how can we support you? Where can they find you if they want to get a hold of you?
Well, obviously probably the easiest place is through the website, photosbyjennifer.com. The commercial website, if you do have a commercial need, I believe you can click on a link at photosbyjennifer.com or jenniferdriscoll.net will take you to that. And then there's always the Facebook page, Jennifer Driscoll Photography, and then Instagram, Photos by Jen with one N. There are way too many ways to get in touch with people these days, right?
I know.
But I pay attention.
And your website is beautiful. Here's what I'm going to tell anybody. If you just want to look at photographs, just go to her website. It's gorgeous. You've done an amazing job. I won't lie. I've been there many times looking at your photography. Because it's just fun. Like, who doesn't like photography? It's just really, really good. So that's where you can find Jen. Do you go by Jennifer or Jen? Because it's like Photos by Jen, but then I feel like I call you Jennifer.
Right. Most people call me Jennifer. My family calls me Jenny. And then my friends, most of them here in Indiana, most people call me Jennifer, but I'll answer to any of the three. Photos by Jen just was available on Instagram, so that's how that happened.
Well, it's also easier than Photos by Jennifer Driscoll.
Yeah, that was getting a little long on the business cards.
It gets really long. Well, yeah. I really appreciate it. Is there anything that we need to know about your business that maybe we didn't ask that you feel like you want to mention and share with our viewers?
No, I think you did a fantastic job. I'm really excited that you're doing this, and I look forward to seeing more interviews.
Yes, thank you. Well, we really appreciate that. It's always a joy. We are enjoying it. We're trying to get, ultimately at the beginning, I am interviewing people I know. And so now I'm branching out to kind of interview people that maybe aren't close friends or acquaintances, but people that I don't know. So that'll be another interesting challenge for us. But I'm excited about it. I love the challenge. And I'm kind of like you when that photographer said, hey, you need to give it up and not do it. I am the same.
Don't listen to that.
Yeah. If somebody tells me no, we're just going to do it. Like, I'm just going to keep doing it until it doesn't produce joy in my life. Is kind of my thought.
That is so fantastic. There was one of my mentors, she has this phrase called joypreneur. And that has always stuck with me, because as long as I have a passion for something and I feel joy doing it and it brings joy to other people, there's value in it. So I've had fun with you today, and I'm very appreciative you took the time to include me, and more people can learn a little bit about my business and my journey through Fishers, and hopefully returning to Fishers someday.
Yes. We would love for you to return to Fishers. Not that Noblesville's too far, but
Noblesville, yeah. It's very vintage.
Yeah, it's not far. It is vintage. And I think that's actually more of what people are frustrated with, but Fishers never had a true downtown like the vintage Noblesville. We never had that.
Right. Noblesville, I mean, it has the courthouse. There was just a lot of history there. So they put a little bit more into Noblesville than they did Fishers. Fishers was just kind of like a second cousin back there. So I think it was appropriate that Fishers grew into what it is now and continues to go. I mean, I do feel like I drove by and I'm like, oh, the IKEA thing was a big deal. And
that was huge.
That still is. I mean, it's a whole experience going there, but that really, really put us on the map.
It is partially because before then you couldn't have signs that size anywhere in Fishers.
That's right.
Today. Well, I absolutely love this. Thank you so much for coming on. For anybody that's now joining, we're kind of finishing up and want to just say thank you to Jennifer for spending the hour with us to kind of chat. Make sure to share with your friends, of course, the interview. We are still kind of slotting next week's guests, so I might be calling the Humane Society again and saying, hey, get on next week in person, but I still have one slot that I'm kind of I'm waiting for someone. So we're going to be working on that. Check back on our Instagram or Facebook to see who we're going to have on, because I'll post that. And then if you have questions for Jennifer after the interview, put them on there. She'll see them. I'll see them. And reach out to her if you're wanting, like she said, I feel like you pretty much do everything. Headshots for business, any of my friends, headshots, babies, seniors, food, apparently, businesses. So really the gamut, I feel like. And I love that, because you didn't say no to anything and you like a challenge. That I love.
Yeah, I love it. I learn something new every day. It's fantastic.
Yes, I love it. Well, thank you everybody for watching. Thank you, Jennifer, for joining us. And we will kind of check in with you next week. And you guys all have a great weekend.
Thank you, everybody.